A meeting between Putin and Zelensky in Moscow. Well, only in the dreams of the Kremlin dictator. And even while in China, Putin doesn't forget about Ukraine. How sweet! And he serves us yet another helping of his nonsense.
By the way, Donald asked me if possible to arrange such a meeting. I said, yes, it is possible. Well, in the end, if Zelensky is ready, let him come to Moscow. Such a meeting will take place.
I wonder, without coming to Moscow, there could be talk of a meeting between the shadow and the speech, right?
In general, I never ruled out the possibility of such a meeting. Ahem.
Nevertheless, the head of the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry has already responded to Putin's invitation to the Kremlin.
Right now, at least 7 countries are ready to host a meeting between the leaders of Ukraine and Russia to put an end to the war. These are Austria, the Vatican, Switzerland, Turkey, and 3 Gulf states. These are serious proposals, and President Zelensky is ready for such a meeting at any moment. However, Putin continues to mislead everyone by making deliberately unacceptable proposals. Only increased pressure can finally force Russia to take the peace process seriously.
Of course, what kind of constructive conversation can we talk about if Putin says he is waiting for an acceptable option to end the conflict? Otherwise, he will not stop.
I think there is a certain light at the end of the tunnel. Let's see how the situation develops. If not, then we will have to solve all the tasks before us by military means.
And of course, we can't go without Putin's usual statements. Russia has always been against Ukraine joining NATO. The Kremlin also insists that it is not fighting for territory but for the rights of people in these territories. And of course, Ukraine needs elections. Or rather, a referendum.
So what should the current authorities do if they want to be legitimate and take full part in the settlement process? Well, yes, they need to hold elections. That is, not elections, first and foremost. They need to hold a referendum in accordance with the constitution of Ukraine. Any questions regarding territories, any at all, can only be decided by a referendum.
Putin is hoping for immortality. Isn't that a bit much? During a conversation in China, Xi told Putin about the chances of extending life to 150 years, something the Kremlin dictator so devoutly believes in.
Well, yes. Modern means of health improvement, medical advancements, and even various surgical procedures, including organ replacements, allow humanity to hope that an active life will continue differently than it does today. The average age varies from country to country, but nevertheless, the overall life expectancy will increase significantly.
Meanwhile, the head of Chechnya has been charged in absentia with a crime by the Ukrainian security service. In one of his speeches, Kadyrov ordered that Ukrainian prisoners be used as human shields. But then the Chechen troublemaker responded with a poem in which he is both surprised by the accusations and yet does not deny them.
So here I am sitting, eating cookies, reading the news, and suddenly I wasn't in the mood for entertainment anymore. Everything around me started to feel uneasy. One not-so-prestigious agency, from a country that starts with the letter U, insists that a mutt named SBU is offended by me.
It's good that Kadyrov is still able to write poetry, but is he still capable of running the republic? That's the question. His health is clearly failing. For example, in August, he nearly drowned in Turkey. Meanwhile, his son Adam is appearing more and more often on his Telegram channel and is already making certain statements.
Strengthening security. On the eve of winter, Ukraine will receive an additional air defense system from the Nordic countries and the Baltics. This was announced by Volodymyr Zelensky. Sweden also does not rule out selling modern Gripen fighter jets to Kyiv. Back in 2023, Sweden allowed Ukrainian pilots to be trained on these multi-role fighters.
The Swedish Gripen is not sensitive to runways, unlike its American counterpart. Moreover, the Gripen can take off and land even from a highway. And for its takeoff, a runway of no more than 400 meters is required. It is also worth noting the tactical and technical characteristics of the Gripen. It can detect aerial targets at a distance of up to 120 kilometers, and accordingly moving ground targets at a distance of up to 70 kilometers.
But the delivery of the aircraft directly depends on the end of the war in Ukraine, the Swedish minister stated. Meanwhile, Russia never ceases to surprise. Pro-Kremlin media have reported on plans to create so-called gamer troops in the aggressor country. According to propagandists, video game enthusiasts are supposedly able to master drone operation faster than regular recruits.
First and foremost, the goal is to save money here. It's impossible to train a professional UAV operator even in 40 hours. As was previously stipulated by the regulations of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. All the more so when it comes to training a UAV operator in just 10 hours. and it should be noted that this initiative is, above all, a political one. It is intended to further militarize Russian society and to demonstrate the Russian side's plans to continue active hostilities not only in Ukraine, but also, accordingly, the threat of possible direct clashes with the NATO bloc.
But can Putin even continue to wage war at all? The UK Defence Minister has spoken of the critical weakness of the Kremlin dictator. John Healey noted that Russia's need for military assistance from North Korea and China is direct evidence of this.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
This is not about requests for help, but about attempts by the Russian Federation to create a new military political bloc to counter NATO, to form the so-called axis of evil. At the moment, its clear configuration is visible. It is Moscow, Beijing, Tehran. But the losses of the occupation army are evidence of Putin's weakness. This amounts to up to 1 million personnel and, accordingly, the effective destruction of the Russian Federation's Black Sea Fleet. According to British intelligence, the presence of the Russian Federation in the Black Sea region has dropped to a record low in the past 100 years.
But of course, Putin is not ready to admit his defeat. During a press conference following his visit to China, the dictator made a new statement about the conditions for ending the war against Ukraine. The Kremlin's master declared that an acceptable option for ending the war could be negotiated if common sense prevails. If not, then everything will have to be resolved by military means.
This is nothing more than a bluff from the Russian dictator. The point is that the Russian dictator is well aware that his so-called territory exchange plan, specifically the withdrawal of Ukraine's defense forces from controlled areas of Donetsk region in exchange for the temporarily occupied territories of Kharkiv and Sumy regions, will completely fail. Moreover, at this moment, there is no advance of Russian troops deeper into the Dnipropetrovsk region.
And the Kremlin dictator also stated that he is ready to meet with President Zelensky. However, according to Putin, the meeting should take place in Moscow.
There is already a response from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. In particular, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Sybiha noted that at the moment, 7 countries are ready to provide territory for a high-level meeting. This refers to a meeting between the President of Ukraine and the Russian dictator. And such proposals from the Russian Federation indicate a prolongation of the negotiation process and actual manipulation of public opinion in the West.
Meanwhile, US President Trump announced that he intends to have a phone conversation with Zelensky in the coming days. According to him, only after that will it become clear what decisions Washington will make next.
At the moment, preparatory work is underway. Specifically, measures are being taken to exert economic pressure on the Russian Federation. In particular, a decision has been made to increase tariffs on Indian goods to 50%, which accordingly serves as a clear economic and political signal to the Russian Federation regarding the Trump administration's further plans to block the economic activities of the occupying country.
But so far, the sanctions have had no impact on the decision-making of the Russian dictator. According to Mikhailo Podolyak, advisor to the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, one possible scenario for ending the war could be freezing hostilities along the front line. However, the final decision will be made by Volodymyr Zelensky.